All right, let me start with get attendance. Then we're going to go over the projects, make sure we're in tune on what we're doing, about articles and your service learning project. And then we'll get into chapters 1 and 2 of Little John today. For next week, you don't have any readings except your article. But I would like you to read this in, I want to add this, it's not a long one, but it's very interesting in terms of defining communication. It's a very nice article about how France used the word communication to talk about travel and connection. And so when France was developing a rail system and a canal system and a road system, they thought of it in terms of the communication of people and goods. So I think at a graduate level, what it does is it pushes you into recognizing that the concept of communication has shifted over years. So it's a nice historical article to read. So I encourage you to read that. All right, let me just check. Deborah Doyle. Anna is here. I see her back there. Joe Jamara. Joe. Lisa is here. Laura. Do we go by Lynn or
Laura?
Laura.
This is my middle name. I don't know why they always put it in there.
Yeah, right. So Andrew is here. Melissa will probably be here. Julia Switzer. Yeah. Jeff is here, and Ben is here. And why are you not yet on my, remind me again?
It's Laura, but I think I was on your list.
Laura.
It's Domnescu. It's the D.
Yeah, you were, but this is a different list. Okay, we'll have to get that straight. But you're here. Ben is here. All right, let's make sure we're caught up on projects. You need to be thinking about your service learning project, which the goal is to get you into some organization that, or business or community organization where you will apply communication theory in order to implement some improvement in communication around a problem there. So let me just check this again, make sure we're going. So the goal for you, there's a couple of goals. One is that as a communication professional, you're going to need to know how to make these connections between theory and problems. Craig is very strong on that, right? That theory comes out of, Bob Craig makes the point that theory comes out of everyday experience and our talk about communication problems. It moves then into theory where we begin to think abstractly and critically about the issues. We do, and then we connect that to theoretical issues. But it's got to, in the end, come back down to saying, well, then we recommend this, or here are the principles we believe you should follow in managerial communication or in small group practice or whatever it is you're doing. So we want to make that complete circle here. We don't want to be stuck up in the theoretical world somewhere. Although some people love theory, and that's okay. But in this class, we're interested in the question of what is it going to do for the life world, Habermas's life world question, where people live, where people communicate and have problems with it. And there's plenty of issues that need addressing in communication problems. I was working with my undergraduate class today on human trafficking. We were talking about the issue of human trafficking around the world. We were doing a theory about communication that says that there are groups of people who perceive the world differently, who communicate then differently about what's important in the world and who have no voice. They have no access to media, they have no access to language, and language sometimes keeps them silent, that there's no language to describe their experiences. And so the importance of phenomenology. See, we would understand this as phenomenology, the question of people's actual existence and their communication practices that they live out. And so we were after the issue of who gives voice to Afghan children in brick factories in Pakistan and child soldiers in Liberia and things like that. So that's what we were doing. All right, so that's your service learning project. And you also have an article due next week, is it? Yeah. So EBSCO, JSTOR, wherever you go for articles, you can actually, there actually are physical places and book journals that you can find. Everything is not on the internet. Douglas Library down at Rutgers has an excellent set of communication physical journals. You can go on the stacks and just, you know, get. I used to, you know, in my doctoral world, we couldn't get articles off the internet, so you had to go down there and photocopy forever. So I have stacks of photocopies at home that I wish were PDF files right now. Yeah. So, so does anyone need to think about, I mean, we can go on Google, we can go on, you know, Google Scholar is an interesting place too. I don't know if you're familiar with Google Scholar. Maybe I'll just hit that quick while we happen to have the internet up here. Google, more, Google Scholar. See, Google Scholar. So we might look under retention members. So Google will then go through and look for academic things. Obviously here, that's a technical term for some other thing that is not what we were thinking about. So maybe I'll add organizations. Yeah, here we go. Organizational culture and employee retention. Now,
I did hear.
yeah.
Do you have to be a member?
Well, see, I think what's happening here is that there's an interaction between the server that we are operating under. I think if I was home, I would not be seeing this the same way. Because what it's doing is making a connection. I've never followed these connections. Let's just, I don't know what this will bring us to.
Because I know, like, when I look at it at home, like the gesture thing, like you have to have a login to see the whole article.
There we go.
That's your same thing as your Blackboard sign-in. That's what you use.
Yeah. So here's an article, and it looks like I can get it, right? Yeah, so I can read that article here. So Google Scholar is and I apparently if you use it from the server here, yeah, commitment and social organization, implied contracts, and so a lot of these articles are already relevant to that question of member retention in there's evolving. Yeah. So anyway, Google Scholar is a place you can go if you've never used it before. So JSTOR, EBSCO, Google Scholar will give you rapid access to a whole bunch of articles that you could probably use. Right, so you read Little John chapters 1 and 2 for today. which if you're taking intro, how many of you are in intro? This is going to feel like a lot of the same stuff because it's academic culture, it's the field of communication studies. So, but we'll go over it, and you can ask any questions that you have of me. But I thought we'd start today with a communication artifact. Okay, I have a 5-minute video that was produced by BBC. I just get it because I get a email from Apple, QuickTime, that tells me news, QuickTime news, you know, and they're all excited about HD video that they're producing now in QuickTime, 1080i and all that kind of stuff. And one of the samples was a BBC thing on China, and I watched it, and it had an effect on me. And what I think I want to do with it with us is to watch it and then ask ourselves questions from the different theoretical perspectives. Rhetorical, semiotic, phenomenological, sociocultural, sociopsychological. What kind of analyses do the theories we've started to look at let us make? What kind of different questions do those perspectives lead us to think about with this artifact? And so I think it'll be useful for us with that. So before I do that, does anybody have a thought, question, concern, clarification?
Just quickly, you probably mentioned this the first week, but the expectation for our presentation next week about the article is
just a simple handout, 1 page, not even a full page. So put make it so that if I wanted to find that article, I would know the APA reference for it. I would have an idea of what it's about, and then I would see a little outline of it. But the main thing I want you to do in this presentation is to show how this researcher or author has taken a theory and how does that theory shape what they did? How does that theory control, influence the way their research happened? So for instance, in my doctoral work, I did a theory called the issue culture theory of William Gamson. It's a media theory about public opinion and the way people talk about things, controversial topics. Well, in Gamson's issue culture theory, there are certain things that you look for. There are 8 different things that he says are important. And so you search then, based on Gamson's theory, I locate news artifacts, which I did printed artifacts, and then I identify these 8 things within each artifact. So I had 114 articles, I identified 892 things, in them, and then I began to do analysis based on which articles had which proportions of these elements in them and which interpretive cultures were present. Well, for my doctorate, then theory was very clearly the structuring device for how it went. And so what I want you to do is to see that when any research you do, an article, if there's a theory in it, that theory should then control what you look for and how you do the analysis based on the theory. You don't just go in and start wandering around. The theory tells you, I'm looking for these things, or I'm looking for these kinds of interactions, or I'm looking at these questions of color, arrangement, form, blah, 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 whatever it is. So find the theoretical skeleton on the body of this article. X-ray the article and see where the structure is.
Could it be any theory?
Yeah, it can be any theory. So, the way I would suggest you do this is, let's take member retention. I was talking to Lisa about the question of how do you retain members in nonprofit organizations? Good communication question about leadership, about communication. So you start looking, you start search under the keywords, and then you look for articles, and you start to scan those articles, and you try to, then you try to find some that say, well, the abstract will say, the author here uses Gamson's issue culture methodology to do analysis of a group, or where there's clearly going to be a theory applied to something. Or the author uses semiotic, blah, 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 to do this analysis. So I want an article where the theory is evident, like your bones are sticking out. You can see the theory. It's not so far under the skin that you never see it.
Might that mean that that the author has just blatantly stated this is the theory?
Yeah, I mean that's the most useful way to do it. But you can look at the methods section, of the research article. Mostly the methods section will say, we used this theoretical perspective, which meant that we were going to ask these questions or look for these things. See, because when we do this video, each different perspective will ask us to ask different questions. We'll call out different parts of it. And you'll see when we do it. And you'll just get used to the idea. All right, so this is about a 4 or 5 minute BBC, 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Thank you, QuickTime. And this is very cool. I actually learned how to use the sound system here, so I can use the sound system. So let's just watch this, and then we'll do some analysis. right, let me just put it up again somewhere for us. All right, now let's start our analysis with the phenomenological questions. Phenomenological questions would be, what did you experience? How did you experience this communicate? This was a communication. It's a communication artifact, which means that it exists, has an independent existence, where it can be reviewed, it can be separated from its author, and studied in different settings. So my talk right now will become a communication artifact because we make it an MP4. But if we weren't making it an MP4, it would just disappear unless you wrote it down word for word. So this is an artifact. Any text, any images, anything that persists over time, an artifact. So how did you experience this artifact of this communication? What did it say to you? What did it stir in you? What was your experience of it?
You were saying, looking at it phenomenologically,
Right.
You said that was what would be used when building bridges between cultures, and what I got was sort of like somebody tossing to me, a lot that was the same and a lot that was different, and showing how there was enough the same. I wanted to cross the bridge.
Okay, so you experienced this as a connecting with something that was familiar and other,
Right.
at the same time, so that in phenomenology they talk a lot about horizons. So your horizon encountered another horizon, which if we did a Venn diagram, there was overlap, there was some same, but there was some different. And so you saw the potential for expanding your horizon by encountering the other and beginning to understand the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Artfully, it was like a very artful invitation
Right.
to do that.
And so you phenomenologically experienced it as an invitation to meet and explore the other. Anyone else? How did you experience it? How did you make sense of it? How did you interpret it?
Well, I was really drawn by the clarity and the vibrant colors of the whole video,
Okay.
and actually almost made me want to go buy a new high-def TV.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's where I got this from. Their marketing, I suppose. We'll get to that under critical theory. We're not going to do that right now.
I have a question. How would I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I understand, you're asking how we experienced it, and I agree with what you said, but how would, the colors and stuff, would that be under,
Semiotic, yeah. When we get to semiotics, there'll be a huge amount of stuff to talk about here.
But it also, how we experience that color.
But you can, yeah, and this is where the things overlap. We don't live in little compartments that are all segmented. But so for some there's the delight, maybe we could call it that, the delight of spectacle, of the colors and of the movement that we experience in it. Yeah. How do we interpret and meet the other? Yeah.
I don't know if this is sociocultural or not, but what about the stuff that was genuine or unique to that culture, that you knew that was about that culture and solely of that, and it portrayed it?
Okay.
The arts that they were doing, some of the, they had, martial arts part of it, they had the dance.
Okay. Right.
Even
So
the fans is something that's genuine to their culture. They originated there.
okay.
Is that considered sociocultural or?
Well, while we're in the phenomenological frame of mind, that's just your experiencing of it. That what came out for you was distinctiveness of cultures. So you experienced it as a meeting of another culture or a reinforcement of stereotypes, perhaps. So phenomenological. Ben?
This might also kind of be a little bit cybernetic, but it was kind of when you
Okay.
kind of the rhythm of the whole, that kind of carried the, kind of
Right, this is an artfully constructed communication where there is visual and auditory, but there's no voice. I don't think there was voice. I don't know. There was all music, so there wasn't spoken voice, but it was nonetheless communication. So, yeah, so you experienced the feelings that it stirred in you were feelings of being carried along and being brought into it.
I thought it would have been a lot different without
The music, yeah.
From a rhetorical perspective, taking the audience into account, if it was aimed at a Western audience, they were very careful to leave out any kind of disturbing images of poverty.
Right.
Anything that would make you wince, from a middle class American perspective or Western European.
Okay, that's both rhetorical and that's a critical analysis of it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's fine. And I just want to try to probe each one first. So let's do rhetorical next. So we talked a little bit about phenomenological, which becomes the question of your experience of it and your experience of meeting something different from you. And how do you connect with that? How do you go back and forth in a hermeneutic circle of trying to understand what this is, and do I understand it properly, and have I dialogued and met the other in this thing? Now rhetorically, what are some of the questions we ask? Rhetorically we ask, who is the intended audience of this communication? And how has it been shaped in order to be persuasive or to accomplish a purpose with somebody? All right, so what are we thinking when we look at this? Go ahead.
I think it seems more like a travel channel kind of thing where it's highlighting all the high points. In the morning it's very slow and the music doesn't kick in, and then it kicks in and then everything's moving around, and then at night it's all serene and you see all the artsy performances, and it seems like, oh, come here, it's not what you really think it is with all the poverty and stuff, preconceptions.
Okay.
But it's kind of saying, come visit, give it a chance. At least that's what I see.
Okay, so the possibility exists that this is rhetorically structured as for the purpose of getting an audience to take an action. See, the rhetorician is always interested in the question, what are we asking an audience to do? And how do we then shape our talk to do that? So Augustine, when he wrote the Christian doctrine in 400s, when the whole rhetorical tradition had been dropped and lost, said that in the speaking within the church, he was talking about speaking within the church, needed to recover the rhetorical purpose of moving people instead of just speaking things into their minds, but moving the heart. So the rhetorical question is, how is this strategically, artistically constructed to move people to action, and what action is it?
One of the things I was going to say is, like, taking it from the phenomenological to the rhetorical. Like, when I watched it, I thought it was, like, peaceful. Even though, with the music and stuff, even though people were doing strenuous stuff in it, they didn't look like they were struggling. Like, the girls up there, doing the one-handed thing, and these people are doing things that take physical activity, and they look very, like, it looks very, like, natural and very simple and, like, easy. And I think with the music and stuff, it's kind of like, okay, it's really nice, but it's easy to just calm and take it all in. It's not like like if you were saying, plan a trip to China, like, you have to call the travel agent, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Okay,
but
so
it's, it's like easy to